Okay, today we're going to be working on what I call a cross cut or X project. Basically, when it's all said and done, what I want to look at is to see to make sure that this is flat going across here, that we don't end up cutting it too short or too deep and it recesses in. There should be a little movement on it to where, you know, when you pull it apart, it doesn't, you don't have to pull it apart or whatever. And the student should never have to hammer it together. That's too tight. If it gets wet, it'll blow that joint right out. How I check these is I put them down over the 2x4 here and wiggle them a little bit. Put them down there, wiggle them a little bit, and then put them in and make sure that they're flat. I also put a speed square onto it, and if I can get it to push up, see, with it being a little bit loose, you can, you know, if you just set it on there, it's not square. But if you push it up, you can get it to be square, okay? And that's just the, that slap that's in there. So, how to do that, or at least how I do it. First of all, these are all centered. And these boards, they're not the same length, so you can't just simply, you know, mark one and have the other one because it's not centered. So, find the center of this board. This is 18 1/4. So half of 18 is 9. Half of 1/4 is 1/8. So I'm going to put a mark right there at 9 1/8. To check that, you turn your tape measure around and you should be on 9 1/8. Okay? Now, what I do is go ahead and mark this one lightly all the way down. 2x4s. 2x4s are 1.5 inches thick. Okay? And that's what we're going to be working on here. So you can't, you know, just set this right over the top of it because your line is gone. So this being 1.5 inches, half of 1.5 inches is 3/4. So I take my tape measure, put it on a number, mark it back 3/4, and mark it ahead 3/4. When you're marking something, what you want, best of all, is to have just a single line. If you come in here and have to color it, now we've got, you know, a 32nd of a difference there to where we don't know, you know, is it on this side of the line? Is it on that side of the line? Is it in the middle? So try to keep your marks as clean as possible. Lay your speed square down over the top to your mark. I've seen a lot of students try to do it this way. And that's just like having a car and then pushing it instead of driving it. Get this down onto the edge, because that's what this edge here is for. Get it down there, hold it straight, mark it a little bit darker, a little bit more emphasis into it. Take it up over the top. Take it down the other side. Now it's a little bit difficult because the 2x4s are rounded. They're rounded here on the edges. They're not perfectly square like this right here is. So you kind of have to look at it and guess a little bit. Then take your other 2x4 and set it down over the top and verify that your lines are where they need to be. Now, my lines are pretty small, so what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to be cutting right on top of this line. What that will do is that'll give me a 32nd of an overcut on this side and a 32nd of an overcut on that side, which should allow this to set in there with some wiggle. This seems to be a little bit fatter 2x4. Okay, now the next thing is, how far down do we cut? Well, ideally, we want to cut halfway down. So this up here part is half, and this part down here is half. The 2x4 is 3 1/2 inches wide. So I'm gonna, I've had this happen where a student cut up from this side and then turned it over and cut up from this side. So therefore, the cuts he had was on the opposite side, going the opposite direction. And he was not a happy camper. So I'm going to put an X, X, and X. That means that that's the part that is going to be gone. That's my drop. So 3 1/2 inches, half of 3 1/2, 1 3/4. So again, now because these are rounded corners, it's a little bit hard. So there's 1 3/4. I go take it over to the other side, 1 3/4. And then I take my speed square and I line those up and draw my line. Now you have to do that on the other side. So I'm going to take my tape measure the opposite direction. So I'm coming down 1 3/4. 1 3/4, and then lining those up. Make my line. Okay, there. This part here is going to be cut out. So now I'm putting it in my handy dandy vise. When I'm cutting, I have my forefinger sticking out to the front. Gives me some help for stability. I take my thumb right here and I put it right over the top of that line. And what happens is that helps me make this cut. Okay, the teeth, where my thumb is setting, is about 1/8 of an inch high over the wood. So the teeth never get to my thumb. Unless, of course, I'm getting kind of wild and I get out of the saw curve. Then I've got problems. So, once I get a saw curve going and down in there, I can take my hand away and hold on to the wood if need be. Keep watching for, make sure that you don't cut too deep on either side. Okay, that should take care of that one. And I'm not pushing down on the saw, I'm just letting the saw do its cut. If you take care of your saws, they'll last a long time and cut. Okay, now I've got both shoulders cut. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to start tapping it here. I've had a lot of students, they come back and they just really hit that thing hard, and when they hit it, their aim is just a little bit off. So not only does it bust the knockout part, the notch, but it also breaks out the shoulder. And they get to start all over. Take little hits, knock it off, and when that happens, you can see that it's almost straight across there. It's right level with my saw cut. I can see that on this side I went a little bit deeper than I did on this side. So we're going to try to put them together. That's the one I measured off of, and there's just a little slap in there, and that's good to go. Now, one of the things a person can do is on that second cut, let's say you got this one cut out, now you're getting ready to cut this one, you can set this down here and mark the sides, and that will tell you how deep you need to cut. That's all you got to do is figure out your shoulders by finding the center of it, 3/4 back, 3/4 forward, and run through. And then you'll have, you know, your finished product like this with it nice and smooth. If it's not nice and smooth, what you can do, let's say this was not deep enough. When we put it together, it's set up a little bit. So what you can do, put it back in your vise. And take and cut down on the high side just a little bit, however deep you need to cut, okay? And then take a chisel and just push that out, okay? Thank you.